Okay, aggravation board making 101. The first thing I use my miter saw to cut the lengths that I want for the board. I usually just use an existing board and don't measure it. I just line up my blade here and I make all my cuts. If you get an 8-foot long board, you'll be able to have the two shorter pieces and the long piece for the 6-quarter. Awesome. Got these all cut to the right length of my existing boards. The next thing I need to do is rip the slots in between where they connect. So I use my table saw to do that, but first I get the blade and rip this line here first and then this line here first, and then I'll rip in between. But I always do the limits, the outer limits first, and so I'll use the fence here, line it up with my blade, and then I'll raise the blade up to about the depth that I did here. See the blade there? That's the limit on that side, and then I raise the blade up to the height that I need for the grooves. So now I've got this line cut and this line cut. All I need to do is keep ripping in between here until it gets like this. Usually what I'll do is I'll get it to a point and then I'll sand all this down, which I'll show you in a little bit. Awesome. Okay. So one of the tricky things about the 6 board is that you've got to make sure that you alternate the grooves. Okay. Don't make a rookie mistake and put this groove here and here. You've got to alternate it. Okay. So when you're cutting the limits on the board, you can cut this line here on this side, but then you've got to flip it this way and cut the other line here. Then you'll need to move the fence to get this line on this side and this line on the other side. So I'll usually just do the cuts for the 2 smaller boards first, and then I'll do these. Make one cut, flip it on the other side, make the other cut like this. Okay, so like I said, you can only when you're doing these boards like that, you can get the outer perimeters of these cuts that you need to rip on the short boards, but you can't do that on the long board. So I need to create the outer perimeter cut for this right here, and whatever I do here, it'll be on the same side over here once I flip it. So like I did for the smaller boards, I will find the fence perimeter here, move the gate to match it, and then I'll grab this other board, I'll make one cut, and I'll flip it and make the other cut, and then we'll be good for that board. Okay, so now you can see I've created the outer perimeter cut for for here and for here, and on the other side. So now I'll just rip this at that same height that I've got here on both sides, like the other smaller boards. Okay, so the next thing that I need to do is I need to rip the wood in between here to make that groove for them to connect. So what I've already done is I've used the fence and I've lined it up with this line right here. And what you've got to do is move the fence outward just a little bit so that you can make cuts to start gradually ripping this out in the middle. What I like to do is use the fence for maybe 2 or 3 cuts to create a good space here and a good space here. And then I remove the fence and I just go back and forth with my hand, using both hands, and just rip it myself. And then clean it up later when I sand. You can get multiple blades in here. I don't. It would be a lot faster if you did. But just remember, move the fence outward because you're trying to cut this in the middle. If not, you'll start making this connection out here larger, and then you'll mess up. So yeah. Okay, now that I've gotten a good space in between here, now I'll remove the fence and I'll just rip it by hand like I said. Okay, so now that I ripped in between, you can see here the notches from my cuts. I'll just sand that down really well. But you saw in the video as I was going on one side as good as I could, and then I flipped sides, and then I went like this across to just get these little pieces that were hanging out off. And then I'll usually just turn it up on its side and just clean off this edge right here with the blade as well. I'll just go like this and clean it off. So then you just do this for all of the boards, and you can sand this later. So after you've got everything ripped, I already sanded in between here to make it nice and smooth. Then you have to mark where you're going to do the holes. I've made this template. Really don't know any other really good way to do it other than making something like this. I put it on top here, get a permanent marker, and then I will just make dots in them here of all the holes that need to be done. And it gives me a little bit of a guide of where I need to drill my holes with the plunge router. Once you got all of your holes marked on your board, it's ready. You're ready to use the plunge router with the bit. I like to kind of experiment and see what depth I want. I've already kind of figured out what depth I want for the marbles. But if you don't want it as deep, then just do it a little more shallow when you do it. If you come over here, you can look. I use the fence over here to help guide me, but I created these tools here so that I know that when I put this up against this fence, and I use my plunge router here, this flat side, it lines me up perfectly for the line in the middle. So then all I have to do is line it up and plunge route it to where I want it to go. I'll usually clamp this down to make sure that this board doesn't move, I don't worry so much about this piece. Then after I do the center pieces here, I'll remove this piece, and I'll use the side piece, the side template to help me, and that helps me line up this side of the holes. And then when I'm done with that, I'll just flip it like that and do the other holes on this side. The only ones that I actually have to do by hand to just free is this hole, these two holes right here, and these two holes right here. So I kind of just eye that and try and line it up as best I can, and plunge route it to finish it off. So as you can see, I have done all of the holes for this one side. Really just kind of repeat it and do the same. On the other board, when you drill the holes on here, you'll have one little hole here. So you'll have to freehand that as well. But other than that, that's kind of how it's supposed to turn out for the holes. Okay, so when you're done, they should fit together like this. There's the hole right there that I had to do kind of by hand. When you're done, you can do a good sand coat, stain it whatever color you want, and 1-inch marbles is what you use to play with, and that's it.